The story begins on top of a building, where a girl can be seen seemingly plotting something bad. And as she looks down as if the life had left her eyes, a tear suddenly falls, and she calls out to her father, crying and asking for forgiveness. And after she closes her eyes, she finally falls. After this, the incident is shown on the news, where a middle school student ended up making this drastic decision because of how she was treated by fellow students who acted like criminals. Even those who found out what had happened to her were filled with rage upon learning that the bullies treated the girl like a dog, putting a leash around her neck and making her walk like a pet. There were even times they fed her burning cigarettes. And to keep her from telling her parents or the authorities, they took inappropriate photos of her and used those to blackmail her, making sure she stayed silent. And when the public finally learned about everything she went through at the hands of her fellow students, they were overwhelmed with shock and anger over what she had endured. On the other hand, her father, Mr. Lee, a vice chairman of one of the largest corporations in the country, was currently holding a press conference to deliver his side regarding the punishment of those who bullied his daughter. And in that very moment, with a serious expression, he bravely said that he would forgive the students who bullied his daughter. After he said those words, silence filled the room due to the unexpected statement. And while the crowd was still stunned by what they heard, Mr. Lee continued, saying that even though it pained him deeply as a father, he still couldn't ignore the fact that it was his daughter who ultimately made the decision to jump from that building. He added that since those responsible for bullying his daughter were still very young, he believed he should show them mercy as someone older than them. So, after saying this, he asked the judge handling his daughter's case to take his words into account. And with that, he ended the press conference, leaving the media in shock over what they had just heard. Despite this, some reporters tried to question him, but he had already started walking away. And as he walked, the media continued asking if this was a decision agreed upon by their family, as he seemed too soft despite everything his daughter had gone through. Some even angrily asked if this was truly the best decision for his daughter. One insisted that even the entire nation was enraged at the students responsible for everything, yet he seemed uncaring and forgave those criminals so easily. The vice chairman remained silent, but suddenly froze when one of the reporters asked if he could still call himself a father after what he had done. But after that, he resumed walking. This made the media furious, throwing out comments and even calling him worthless, asking what his daughter had done to deserve him so easily forgiving those criminals. After a short while, the press conference and everything that happened began spreading across the news and social media. And here, Mr. Lee was bombarded with criticism over his decision. Some even said he didn't deserve to be called a father because of what he had done. While the internet continued buzzing about the incident, there was also speculation about the real reason behind the father's decision. Some even thought maybe the girl wasn't actually Mr. Lee's biological daughter. On the other hand, Mr. Lee, now sitting and drinking at home, said to himself that people could say whatever they wanted about him, like not being her real father, or perhaps having disowned her. But the truth is, they had no idea what he was really feeling. And as he thought about this, he suddenly shattered the bottle of liquor he was holding out of sheer rage. And while his hand bled from the broken pieces, he told himself that these people knew nothing about how painful everything felt for him right now. And his act of forgiving those criminals wasn't because he had truly forgiven them, but because he had no intention of punishing them under the too lenient juvenile law. Because that wasn't the kind of punishment he wanted for those bastards. After this, he cried even harder and began apologizing to his daughter, because he failed to notice right away the terrible things she was going through, and the reason why she couldn't bring herself to tell him, her own father, and instead chose to endure it all on her own. He even thought about how his daughter always put others before herself, and that thought filled him with even more regret. Because if he had raised her to be selfish, none of that would have happened to her. But in the end, he furiously declared that the only promise a worthless father like him could give was that he would make those bastards who tormented her pay, and that they would experience everything she had gone through. While he was drowning in deep sorrow, his assistant suddenly arrived and said that the child he had entrusted to him was now with him. Upon hearing this, Mr. Lee quickly turned and asked the child if she had adjusted to life in South Korea. This young girl was none other than our main character, the psychopath named Karma. Meanwhile, upon hearing the question, she immediately smiled and called Mr. Lee her stepfather, saying that thanks to his care, she had peacefully adjusted to living in the area. Mr. Lee said he was glad to hear that from her, while the assistant could be seen with a worried expression as he looked at Karma. Following this, Mr. Lee stood up and said they could begin preparations for her to attend school. Upon hearing this, the assistant was visibly shocked and asked the vice chairman if he was serious. Karma, on the other hand, smiled and cheerfully said that even someone like her could now attend school in this country. The assistant became even more anxious after hearing this, because Karma's expression now looked like she was ready to stir up trouble. Because of this, he strongly opposed the chairman's plan. But the chairman replied, why would he stop Karma from studying when they lived in a free country? Despite that, the assistant still insisted on opposing it, so the vice chairman said that no matter what he said, he would do everything to get Karma into the same school his daughter used to attend. And he figured the preparation would take about half a year. After that, he approached Karma and told her she should already be adjusting during that time. And as an example, she should also start having new friends. The worry never left the assistant's face, but despite that, Karma bluntly said he shouldn't beat around the bush and just admit that she wasn't interested in making friends. Instead, she was looking for new toys at school. The vice chairman didn't respond, and instead, his terrifying expression seemed to silently agree with what Karma wanted to happen. A few months later, at Unro High School, a girl was seen telling someone that their cute little Ji-yoon needed to drink the snack they had prepared for her. While they pressured her, Ji-yoon began crying and shaking in fear. That student began asking why she still hadn't drunk the protein-rich special milk she had prepared. When Ji-yoon didn't respond, she said she already understood why. Because Ji-yoon probably lacked protein. So, because of that, she began cutting Ji-yoon's hair and placed it into the milk they were forcing her to drink. While the other bullies laughed, she insisted again that Ji-yoon drink it, saying she was sure it would taste good. Despite this, Ji-yoon tried to reason with them and, crying, said the milk was expired and also had flies and her own hair in it. And just as she said that, she suddenly vomited, unable to stomach that kind of food. Seeing this, the bully mockingly asked why she was already throwing up even though she hadn't drunk it yet. Ji-yoon tried to plead, saying that aside from being expired, the milk could also be bad for her health. But while raising the scissors, the bully argued back and asked if she didn't know how milk was made. Because in the same way, this milk she was forcing her to drink was made like that. She added that she was hurt by Ji-yoon's words, because she only wanted to feed her delicious things. So she asked Ji-yoon if she didn't understand her intentions. But after that, she started to threaten her, asking if she would finally understand her intentions if she cut her with the scissors she was holding. Because of this threat, Ji-yoon had no choice but to say that she would drink the milk. But despite that, the bully still hurt her using the scissors, causing her to scream. On the other hand, some of their classmates who witnessed what was happening said that the bullying seemed to be going way too far. So one student asked their classmate if they should report it to the teachers. But they were immediately stopped by their classmate, who said that the girl, Yoon-jin, was also one of the criminals responsible for the death of the daughter of one of the country's wealthiest businessmen, and she was never punished. This girl was none other than Song Yoon-jin, 15 years old, and she was also involved in the case of Mr. Lee's daughter, facing charges of aggravated assault. One of the students couldn't believe it and asked if that was really possible. The person he was talking to said that if he didn't believe it, he should ask the other students from their previous school. While the bullying against Ji-yoon continued, the class president could be seen seriously studying. But as it went on, he started to get annoyed because he could no longer focus on what he was doing. Because of that, he stood up. But before he could do anything, the door suddenly opened and their teacher entered, saying that whenever she wasn't around, the class became wild, and she could even hear them all the way from the teacher's office. After that, she ordered them all to sit down because she had an announcement. At that moment, one of the bullies asked in confusion what was going on, saying their teacher seemed early today. On the other hand, Yoon-jin told Ji-yoon to hide the milk they were forcing her to drink. And after that, she threatened that if Ji-yoon snitched to the teacher, she would spread her photos. Upon hearing this, Ji-yoon tried to suppress her emotions and the pain she was feeling. Following this, the teacher announced that today they had a transfer student in class. And since she came from North Korea, she asked everyone to treat her kindly. While several students were amazed at what they were hearing, the teacher asked Karma to introduce herself. And here, she happily said that her name was Karma and she came from North Korea. In the end, she gave a cheerful wink to her new classmates, asking for their care. Meanwhile, back at the vice chairman's place, his assistant was still urging him to change his decision because they still had time to do so. He even said it would be best to return her to the North Korea Juvenile Detention Center because he was truly concerned about the child. But before he could finish what he was saying, Mr. Lee stopped him and asked if he really thought he took Karma in as his adopted daughter. The assistant immediately responded and said he was right. Because of that, Mr. Lee turned to him and said he didn't adopt a daughter. Instead, he brought in a hunting dog to begin his revenge. The assistant couldn't believe what he heard, but in the end, he had no choice but to accept his boss's decision. And at that moment, he remembered Karma, how she had escaped alone from North Korea at the age of 13 and was only found by patrols along the Han River. Based on her medical examination, they discovered that due to biological experiments conducted on her by North Korean authorities, parts of her brain were damaged. According to their assessment, she was a psychopath who had no sense of pain or even shame. They also discovered that the blood on her clothes had traces from one of her family members, leading them to suspect she had a tendency toward familial homicide. And according to their investigation, she was linked to 13 murder cases, which matched the blood samples found on her clothes. And because she was still a minor at the time, she was sent to juvenile detention for 2 years. And although she experienced severe suffering during her rehabilitation, authorities also discovered that the child had extreme aggressiveness and sadistic tendencies beyond their understanding. She also possessed superhuman physical abilities, and because of this, the Juvenile Protection Board decided to release her and place her under supervised probation directly ordered by the Ministry of Justice. Meanwhile, at this very moment, Yoon-jin could be seen looking like a villain with an irritating expression on her face, laughing as she said that there was an interesting girl she wanted to mess with. On the other hand, Karma also had the same smile, as if she had already found her target. Meanwhile, outside their classroom, a group of male students could be seen talking about the new transfer student from North Korea. And as they ran toward the classroom, they were also talking about how beautiful she was. And once they got there, they started peeking through the window, and there they saw Karma. They were truly amazed at how beautiful she was. In the middle of all this, their teacher suddenly arrived and chased them away. Inside the classroom, one of her classmates commented that those male students were a bit too strange. After that, she asked Karma if she thought the same. She also mentioned that when Karma introduced herself, her accent didn't sound like it came from North Korea, so she asked if Karma had practiced speaking that way. Karma smiled at her and said that she had practiced by watching K-dramas. Following that, her classmates asked her to introduce herself again using the way people spoke in her hometown. Karma didn't hesitate and happily greeted them in the same way. Because of this, her classmates screamed with excitement and said she was really cute. Some of them even thought that she might be just as popular back in her country. While all this was happening, Ji-yoon quietly observed them and thought that the classroom had gotten noisy ever since Karma arrived. But because of this, she also felt relieved, because if her classmates were busy with the new student, the bullies wouldn't notice her anymore. But at the same time, she also felt envious of how her classmates treated Karma, and she even wished that she could laugh just like them. She also thought that if it were possible, she wished she could have been as pretty and popular as the transfer student. But her thoughts were interrupted when Yoon-jin's group suddenly arrived and asked the classmates what all the fuss was about. At that moment, Ji-yoon started trembling again and felt a sense of dread. After this, Yoon-jin greeted Karma and welcomed her to their country. Then, she complimented her on how beautiful she was, like a gentle actress. She even added that she hoped they could become close friends, so she encouraged her to join their group. Karma happily asked what kind of group it was. But upon hearing their conversation, Ji-yoon became even more anxious and started worrying about Karma. She thought that out of all the bullies who could have approached Karma, it just had to be Yoon-jin, the psychopath. She also thought that the new transfer student seemed easy to fool, so she anxiously asked herself if Karma would really be okay. Karma didn't answer right away, and instead, she just stared at the group of bullies.